Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, college football playoff fans across the nation and around the world, and maybe out in the International Space Station. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. Once again, my co-astronaut on this journey, this odyssey, this 2024 A Space Odyssey is a guy named Matt Wilhelm, who won a national championship with Ohio State in 2002, big time linebacker, won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers 2009 season. Matt Wilhelm, welcome back to the Tim May Show. Your home away from home.
It's great to be with you, Tim. And I think you said college football playoff fans, and I want to say that I'm sure Buckeye fans were initially college football playoff fans, and they are now enamored with being a college football playoff fan because we've now got to enjoy 3 additional weeks of Ohio State football.
It's crazy, isn't it? And it may not be over yet. We'll see. As the old saying goes, as you learned in the National Football League playoffs, don't put the cart before the horse, right? And what a matchup Ohio State's got this week, playing really at Texas, but really playing in Dallas in the Jerry World at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Actually, don't mistake Arlington for Dallas, but playing the Texas Longhorns seems like a possible home field advantage for the Texas Longhorns. But Buckeye Nation, just like it did at the Rose Bowl, just like it did against Tennessee, the volunteer quote takeover was not quite as what people thought it was going to be in Ohio Stadium, in frenzied Ohio Stadium. And then at the Rose Bowl, Ohio State fans found a way, and we finally figured out. We thought it was more like 60-40 Ohio State fans when you figured out all the red dots, the scarlet dots where they were with in the pixels amongst the green pullovers, jerseys, whatever you want to call it, the Ducks fans were wearing. They left there with their tail between their legs, is all I remember. But bottom line is now you're taking on Texas, Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian. What's the first thing that comes to mind, Matt, about this matchup?
I think first and foremost, it's the blue bloods that this Final Four has produced, well beyond just our matchup. I'll say, Texas, Ohio State, in many cases, SEC versus Big Ten, and again, we're going to give SEC Texas because I know the media pundits have been dragging the SEC through the mud, given their bowl and college football playoff performance. But that said, um, you know, Penn State's been vying for years to become a blue blood. And I think in some cases, their inability to consistently win the Big Ten, consistently beat Ohio State is a lot of the reason why they're not considered a blue blood. And then you look at their opponent in Notre Dame and what Marcus Freeman's being able to do. I love Marcus. He's an Ohio kid. He's a Buckeye. I think the fact that you know just the egg on the face of Brian Kelly with how that all worked out with him, the inability for Notre Dame to beat an SEC football team, so he had to go join one,
Yeah.
and now he's playing in a I don't want to say a meaningless bowl game, but a good bowl game, not in the playoff with a very talented LSU football team, and we all know what Nick Saban was able to do, what the many coaches between him and Brian Kelly have been able to do. So I just think that this Final Four with three blue bloods is kind of expected. I think it's not a surprise to anyone. I think as I said, Penn State vying, but the matchup with Texas, I think it's intriguing because there are times while Oregon did their very best and stayed undefeated, that there were times where Texas and the way in which they played and the way in which they won in the SEC in year one impressed so many that they were kind of pressing Oregon for a number one spot, and then Texas would lose, right,
Yeah.
to
To
someone.
Georgia.
Yeah, right, exactly, to Georgia, and so it's a great matchup. I think nationally because for whatever reason, and I know Arizona State was the darling this year from the West, but like the West has kind of besides Oregon, Arizona State and Oregon kind of like were the anchor for success with teams kind of like the Mountain Time and Cali time or West Coast time. And I think so. Texas, you looked at their ability to produce a quality football opponent. Texas A&M was a team that we thought could be in a similar situation if they got their things together with first year coach Mike Elko coming in from Duke. But great matchup, great challenge. And I think that Texas is gonna, and I'm not gonna say the result. This is just my, outside eyes. I think Texas is gonna feel more like a Tennessee football team than they did an Oregon football team. I
Wow.
just think they're gonna have, an SEC level of talent at many positions. That means speed, that means physicality, that means size. And I know that, Oregon's recruited at an extremely high level, and of course we lost to Oregon earlier in the season, but you just saw a dominant Ohio State football team, as you said, have that whole crew walk away with their tail tucked between their legs and just taking a massive L, uh, going back to what they need to do to get ready to compete for a national championship next football season.
Yeah. As the late great Earl Bruce used to say, that's water under the dam. That wasn't so funny though after the North Carolina flooding and everything, but it was funny when he said it
I'm
because he
sure it
used to
was.
refer to Greg McMurtry from Michigan as Fred McMurray. But anyway, that's another story. Uh, well, okay, you didn't have much to say there. No, I'm just messing with you. You know that. Bottom line is, Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, those are two damn good matchups. Like you said, from the blue blood realm, all of whom have won multiple national championships in their in their history. And then playing at Texas for Ohio State, the road. Nobody said the road was going to be easy for Ohio State. It took on the third best team of the SEC and pounded it. Took on the best team from the Big Ten, according to the Big Ten championship game and regular season, and pounded it. What does it do with Texas? I'm looking at this matchup, Quinn Ewers. I'm looking at this matchup, Quinn Ewers. Yeah, I thought I'd turned all my ringers off, but evidently the alarm ringers stay on. Um, but they're taking on Quinn Ewers, a guy who was at Ohio State for what, about 3.5, 4 months. Went back to, basically his homeland to lead Texas. And I don't know, this is a very intriguing matchup for a lot of reasons because right now, Ohio State is no longer a mystery to me. They've got their defense playing on a ridiculous level, sans two or three possessions a game, and then they've got their offense playing on the level we thought it would play on all along after everything got clicking. And
Agree.
but you've got Texas. I'm not sure what Texas is doing. Texas is messing around. I mean, they just seem to have just a real drop off from one quarter to another. Yet they've found a way to beat Arizona State, right? Uh,
Absolutely. I think, talking about Quinn Ewers, I think there's times in different waves of the football season, 2 to 3 game waves, where he looks like he could win the Heisman Trophy.
yeah,
And then there's just an inconsistency, that comes. And I think he, I want to say an aggravation of some type of injury, which led to Arch Manning, playing and or starting a game or two as well. I also believe this is just the mentality of a football player. You can say you can block it out, but if the conversation of a package and or if things don't go well for Texas, that there'd be some type of quick hook on Quinn Ewers, and that means Arch comes in and stabilizes everything as an experienced quarterback as well on the most massive stage. Um, that's a thing, and I think that's a thing that a lot of people, might just kind of make again water under the dam or sweep under the rug. But like, it's tough to play that way, to play next to perfect, at a school like Texas, as the guy, and to have the guy that you have behind you that everybody's been chirping for now for multiple years that you've beat out, and to think that he's going to come in and do something that you're not. So that's a thing. And I think to go back to your point about watching the Arizona State Texas game is I thought that game was going to mimic the kind of like SMU Penn State game where it was a little wishy-washy, feel each other out in the first quarter. I think it might have ended 3-0 or 0-0. And then it was just a barrage of touchdowns. And I know Penn State's from SMU came, from the defense in regards to, as pick sixes, but I just thought when it was 17-3, I believe, or 14-3 in that football game that, you know, Texas is just going to put them away, mid third quarter and just, yeah, cruise. Props to Arizona State, but also I think it's a great body of film for Ryan Day and the staff to kind of dive into as to, well, you get the Scatterboo trick plays and Scatterboo be kind of being a unique player. But I mean, Junkins and Henderson's are extremely unique players and have been their entire football careers, not just in this Arizona State uniform like Scatterboo has been. You get the toss pass, the one for a touchdown, but then just breakdowns with coaching breakdowns, player breakdowns for that to actually be a game and get to overtime.
Yeah.
I think it's something that Ohio State uses as an advantage to kind of find little holes, little nuances, and on how they attack them offensively in their defense, and of course on the flip side. So I don't completely concur with the. I think it's the last I saw, and I'm not a gambler. The 7 points, because that seems like a lot in a game against two teams that occupied space inside the top five all season long.
Yeah, that is a big margin. But like I just said, Ohio State's clicking. Anybody can see Ohio State's clicking. Now that they've discovered Jeremiah Smith is one of the great players in college football history when it's going to be all said and done, barring injury. Uh, and Texas is like clicking sometimes and clacking the next time. You know what I mean? So I can understand the margin. And we all know that spreads are made for people to entice people to go to the betting window and or their computer and gamble. So that's what a spread is. Bottom line
Sure.
is Ohio State's got it going on. And I want to ask you first, keep your answers a little bit shorter now. Give me the one guy. I talked to Bill Bender about this. He's going to be from the Sporting News. My great friend, your good friend from the Sporting News. I'm gonna have a little insert coming in here in a minute, an addendum to our podcast, uh, just on his take on the national scene and Texas, Ohio State. But I want to get your take on this before him. The one guy on offense, other than Jeremiah Smith, who has caught your eye in the first two games of the college football playoff for Ohio State. Give me that one guy and the reason why.
I'm gonna go with Will Howard because he's the distributor. I think the efficiency that he's playing right now is unmatched of all the quarterbacks left in the college football playoff, and I'll say maybe even of all 12 since the start of the college football playoff. The efficiency, the confidence, and I think to kind of put a bow on it, I think there's a chip, and he's undoing, some of the narrative that was created by his performance, maybe the way the Oregon game ended first time around, in that how could you do that moment, or how could you not know moment, and then also I think the multiple interception, lack of production that came in that the game against Michigan. And this is that opportunity to undo the narrative. Nothing associated with the NFL football game, just in a Buckeye uniform for Buckeye fans and college football plans or fans. He is playing at a level. And in some cases, he's not just throwing. I mean, yes, he's thrown it up to the best receiver on the football field, but these are accurate footballs thrown strategically in the right spot to the best player in college football. But I think, the G
Yeah,
Scott, G Scott in play action and Ibuka's catch that gets tipped and then caught. So there's a timing, there's a cadence about him. He doesn't look flustered. He's not panicking when the pocket breaks down. And I think he is the guy that I will say, besides Jeremiah Smith, who is we are riding his back all the way to the national championship game.
he's a comet. Comets don't come by very often. I'm talking about Jeremiah Smith, the comet, Jeremiah Smith. Defensively, name me one guy that's caught your eye.
Cody
Uh,
Simon. I
dude,
mean,
dude,
he
hey, wait,
is
wait. First, let me throw this a
sure.
little bit of zen in there. Your yin, my yang. Go ahead now.
I'd say Cody Simon, and because if you were again, you and I probably watch as much as we've been around the game. We watch the game, and he just pops off the film, right? He's
Yeah,
making plays everywhere.
yeah.
If you were to watch an Ohio State football game, or the Tennessee game, and or the Oregon game, having not watched Ohio State and not understand who's who on the defense, you would just go, "My gosh, is zero always around the football? Or is zero always making a play? Or is zero always making a play for a loss? That's a TFL, that's a sack, that's a pass break. It's just production out the wazoo. And it's Buckeye Leafs just, on his helmet, right? winning
They need to go
performance.
down the back of his jersey. I don't
Yeah,
think
right.
ever
Yeah,
think about doing that.
yeah, winning performance and extremely production and game-changing plays. That's what earns you a Buckeye leaf, to not get overly specific, but he is everywhere. I think more so than anything, while also taking those like novice eyes and expert eyes and going that he's the guy. I think listening to some of the comments coming out of the other defensive players, and they would all say the same thing that I just said. It's
Yeah.
Cody Simon. Cody Simon, the leader. Cody Simon, the guy. Cody Simon, the player. Cody Simon, the captain is just leading us the same way. I would on the flip side to your last question was the same way Will Howard is leading us offensively.
Yeah, you're in my gang, man. I mean, I'm a Cody Simon, just like a Will Howard. Those are the two I would name. And my 1A on the offense, other than Jeremiah Smith, as we prefaced with, would be Donovan Jackson leading out. But we're going to save that for when we come back from my conversation with the great Bill Bender, Pickerington, Ohio's finest, and basically national collegiate football correspondent for the Sporting News. Here's my conversation with Bill Bender. Oh my goodness, look who's dropped in again, the Tim May Show. One of my favorite, I don't know if I call you a guest, one of my favorite semi proactive co-pilots, Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Bill Bender, welcome back to the Tim May Show, my man.
How's it going, Tim? Thanks for having me on.
We're flying straight and level, baby, and a little bit low altitude because I do like to do that nap of the earth, skirt the treetops kind of flying. And I know you do too. But my man, just when I'm trying to figure out what kind of chalk they did this college football playoff bracket with, because if you went chalk, you're not only walking home, you're probably hitchhiking home. Am I correct?
Well, it depends on your definition of chalk. I mean, if we're
Exactly.
talking traditional blue blood, high revenue, money producing programs, I think the college football playoff did just fine. Now, by the letter of the seeding, and these teams that had a first round bye getting beat in this quarterfinal round, it's because they didn't seed it properly. If Oregon wasn't playing Ohio State, maybe they move on. If Georgia didn't have a backup quarterback, maybe they move on. But that's neither here nor there, because I do think the 4 teams we got through have created a pretty riveting semifinal round. I don't think anybody's going to be complaining this weekend.
Yeah, no one from anywhere other than the Southeastern Conference. But I think it's a truly magnificent Final Four, to be honest with you. And I know the Big Ten concurs, and now obviously the Big Ten could have a championship game to gloat about, or neither one of them could make it. I'm talking about Ohio State and Penn State. Ohio State taking on Texas of the Southeastern Conference, barely a new member of the Southeastern Conference, and of course Penn State taking on a team that should be in the Big Ten but isn't, Notre Dame. What a magnificent time before we move on quickly into details for Northern teams in the first ever iteration of the expanded college football playoffs. Am I correct? And I know when I say this, ladies and gentlemen, truth in advertising, Bill Bender lives in Pickerington, Ohio.
Well, and probably, as you know, I've worked with Sporting News for 12 years. And when I started, I had a specialization in the Big Ten in the Midwest, and that's where I'm from, and that's where I live. And probably the 4 programs I write and talk about most are Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, and Penn State. So, and I would say Nebraska is probably 5 out of that grouping.
Yeah.
And to have 3 of them in the playoff a year after Michigan won a national title, you can't help but think there is a resurgence to back in the days when I was in high school and in the 90s, when it felt like, okay, whose turn is it? It was Michigan's turn one year, then Penn State, then Ohio State. It's been a while for Penn State and Notre Dame, to be fair, to win it all.
Yes.
But to have them on this stage with one of them's going to get a shot at it, I think that's a fairly significant big deal.
Bill Bender of the Sporting News, you keep your eye on the national scene, as you just pointed out. The most surprising team in the Final Four, from Bill Bender's point of view, is?
Well, I mean, it's not Ohio State. It may be Ohio State in terms of the way they're playing and how they've just
No, I'm
knocked
talking
out
about the most surprising. You didn't see this coming at all in August.
Penn State, probably. I would have probably said they would get in, back in August, and I think we did, but we didn't think they would be in the Final Four. So that is some legitimacy for Penn State. I know they lost the 2 regular season games, but had you said Texas in August, I said, yeah. Ohio State, of course. Notre Dame, I probably said, yeah, that means they figured some things out and had a nice path. So I would say Penn State because of the big game reputation. But of course, they did have an advantageous path on one hand. But Tim, they took advantage of that advantageous path. They took care of business against SMU and Boise State and looked good doing it.
Yeah, just think if Notre Dame had not hit that huge pothole and had to pull over to fix the ridiculous flat and even dented the rim. They had to get the rim fixed. I'm talking about that loss to Northern Illinois. Notre Dame would be undefeated, you know? And uh, so I think it's a much better Final Four than a lot of people think. I mean, except for the fact that Texas lost fairly convincingly to Georgia the first time and then fell in overtime to Georgia in the Southeastern Conference Championship game, or else, you can look at it, Ohio State's pothole against Michigan, and it was a pothole. I mean, we can say, Michigan and everybody else, people can talk all they want, but for whatever reason, the Ohio State offense, and especially the maybe the brain trust, which is Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, in whatever order you want to put them in, didn't show up that day for whatever reason, and they paid the heavy price for that. But all of these teams, like you just said a while ago, Bill, they're blue bloods, and they belong, right?
Yeah, and I heard Dan Wetzel on a podcast or a reel the other day say something. He compared Ohio State to Mike Tyson, the first round knockout thing, and that's a good analogy because I don't know. You've covered a lot of Rose Bowls, Tim's. I don't know that you've covered one that was over 8 minutes in. I don't know that you've covered one where I believe the prop on Jeremiah Smith was 74.5 receiving yards, and I think he had it in 4.5 minutes. So the way that they are coming out swinging, and you hear Ryan Day use the phrase fight and, come out swinging, those kind of things, they knocked Oregon off their feet. Now, played both sides of this. Oregon hadn't played a game since December 7th. I thought they looked a step slow. I know, I got you, but they looked a step slow in the first quarter. They weren't ready for what hit them. That was clear. I thought, those are one of those games that it's over by halftime.
Yeah.
So you got to be impressed with the way Ohio State's playing and using their second life. And do I think we could tweak the format so we don't have teams waiting 4 weeks to play? Yeah, I do. I think we could start this right after the regular season.
Yeah.
Ohio State had to wait. Ohio State had to wait 3 weeks to play Tennessee, and I didn't think that was right either.
I agree. But we got to keep those. We got it. We had to figure out a way. They had to figure out a way to make a 12-team playoff work instead of making it 8, and playing the quarterfinals and then playing the semis on the traditional bowl weekend or bowl time, which is around the January 1st holiday, and then playing the championship game a week and a half later. So, I was just trying to keep everybody happy, but expand the field so more so more teams could be in it. And, you get what you pay for, so to speak. I think we've got another tweak coming. I mean, personally, I wouldn't be disappointed if they said, you know what, we screwed up here by going to 12 teams. Let's bring it back to 8. 8 is the magic number. 12, if you got 12, why not 16? You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. So what is your take on, do you think they would ever go retrograde and go and make it 8 instead of 12 or 16? What's your take on that, Bill? You cover the national scene as well as anybody.
No, because they're no postseason format I know is contracted ever. They've never contracted the NFL or the MLB or the NBA. To your point, we skipped a step. We probably should have tried 8 before we tried 12. And we should have thought about that. And I've always said, at least in my time covering it for SN, there's never been a year that I've covered it, and really never year that I've watched it, that I thought more than like 6 or 7 teams could win it.
Yeah.
And if you would have played 8, that would have been cool. You would have been able to have your 1 seed have a home game on campus. It would have made the semifinal round that much more intriguing. And then I think you could play the championship game on January 1st personally, because as you know, I'm an NFL guy too. And I just worry that the college football playoff race will be considered an afterthought. When you consider that this week we're fine. semifinals are played before wild card round. The national championship game is going to be played one day after the divisional playoffs, where people are so into the divisional playoffs and looking for, and you know how networks work. They cover the NFL more than they cover college football. So it's always been that afterthought on Monday. Why can't we do that on January 1st?
Yeah.
And figure it out then. Imagine the stage, that stage that we had for the quarterfinals on January 1st. Give the national championship game that stage. Give it that pageantry. Play it at the Rose Bowl. Do what you have to do.
21 million people tuned in, maybe more. Unbelievable for that game, Ohio State versus Oregon, the rematch. By the way, if it had been 1 through 8, as the college football playoff final rankings were, not automatic qualifiers from conference championships, which is what they're really looking at now. You would have had Oregon versus Indiana, Georgia versus Tennessee, Texas versus Ohio State, and Penn State versus Notre Dame. Pretty interesting how that would have worked out, right? That would have been your quarterfinal games headed toward the semifinals. I could have lived with that. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm okay with that. I mean, you want to have the best teams in it. Now, that said, Tim, this Final Four that we have has a great storyline for each team.
Yes.
It really does. I think the Penn State trying to win their first since 86. That's a long time. And James Franklin finally getting a swing at a big game. Notre Dame since 88. You know me, I'm a Catholic school kid, and I'd be lying if I didn't say out loud that I thought, I kind of want Ohio State and Notre Dame to play for it. I think it would be an amazing game, an amazing backdrop, amazing story with Marcus Freeman. And he is winning games like Jim Tressel did.
Yeah.
I think I can say that safely. He is. They play Tressel ball, and they're doing it to a T. Ohio State with the redemption story coming off the Michigan loss to, just looking like this ridiculous team with Jeremiah Smith and Will Howard, and that defense coming up with 8 sacks. And then I'm not discounting Texas. Texas has got players. They just haven't put it all together in a while. I was there when they did, though, Tim. I was there when they did it to Michigan. And I thought to myself that day, that team's good enough to win a national title, because they went up to Michigan Stadium and housed Michigan when Michigan had their best players on the field. They just haven't put – go ahead.
Right.
They haven't put a game like that together since.
I've got an idea for you next year when you're covering games like that. Get yourself a little selfie and get a selfie of you like standing, like, for example, top tier of Michigan Stadium well after you finished your game, and have a little thought bubble going up from your head going, I think that Texas team can win it all. You know what I mean? It would be very popular.
Well, I mean, of course, it was September.
No, still, you had a feeling. You know what I mean?
Quinn Ewers played well in that game.
Hell yeah,
Quinn Ewers made a season-saving throw the other day against a good Arizona State team that really came at him with Jim Scatterby with everything they had. Our own Bill Trocchi was down at that game. He said it was a great atmosphere. But Texas has guys, too. In that Texas-Ohio State game, you are going to have 32 players, according to 24/7 Sports, that have a 5-star rating or better.
Yeah.
20 of those guys are on the Ohio State sideline. The other 12 are on Texas. But that's a lot of 5-star talent flying around.
That's not a constellation. That's a Milky Way. Hey, by the way, if you had gone by the final CFP rankings this year, the final CFP rankings were Texas 3, Penn State 4, Notre Dame 5, Ohio State 6. That's not too bad. I mean, the final rankings, kind of hit it, because you're going to have an upset or two, but it's hard for Oregon. It's hard to beat a team the second time around. Same thing with Georgia and Texas. It would have been hard to maybe for Georgia to beat Texas 3 times. Who knows? Looks like they've got Texas's number. But, before we move on to these games, I wanted to ask you, who really, when you looked at it, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, who really of the final 12 did not belong in your mind, Bill?
That's a tough question. I mean, we could argue SMU. And here's but the SEC team that probably did belong over them, it wasn't Alabama or South Carolina. It was probably Ole Miss, strangely enough. Not just saying that because I watched Ole Miss beat Duke or Lane Kiffin complained. If you look at the top 5 scoring defenses in the country, 4 of them are playing this week, and Ole Miss was the other one.
Yes.
So maybe they could have done something with that. But again, they lost to Kentucky, and they need to be penalized for losing to Kentucky. And, Illinois beat South Carolina, highly entertaining fourth quarter. Alabama got beat by Michigan And Michigan didn't have their guys on the field that were on the field against Ohio State and Texas this year. They were playing a lot of new guys in that game, and Alabama rolled out another dud. So it's hard to hear those complaints from the SEC. I get where it's coming from. I do think they have, how do I put it, tougher road environments top to bottom. But that doesn't mean they have tougher teams top to bottom, and it doesn't mean the top of their conference was better than the Big Ten, which it wasn't.
Boy, playing those tougher road environments didn't help Tennessee very much, did it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can claim that during the regular season, but at
Yeah,
the end
exactly.
of the day, you have to penalize team for losing games. And I think
Yeah.
the Big Ten's misfortune is that Oregon and Ohio State had to play in a quarterfinal round. Because I really believe if Oregon didn't play, if they would have seeded the 12-team playoff properly, Oregon would have played the winner of Boise State and Indiana, and they would have beat them. And you would have, there's a decent chance, Tim, that have we seeded this properly, that Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State would have been 3 of the 4.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is what it is at this point. It's the Final Four. I like this Final Four. This Final Four has got a lot of panache to it from the standpoint of football history, right on down the line. Penn State has won its way into this. I thought Penn State from the late fourth quarter on has been playing pretty damn good offense. You know what I mean? And letting it all hang out as opposed to what we've seen at Penn State in the past. I think Notre Dame, boy, if Notre Dame could just get into the 30s, in this quarterfinal. I mean, in this semifinal, I think they've got a hell of a shot because I really like their defense. I think that's really what's going to come down to in that game is who blows a play on defense, because these are two fairly equally, I don't know, teams in my part. I think the two most talented teams are Ohio State and Texas, like you just pointed out a while ago about the 5 stars and even the 4 stars floating around in that constellation. Is quite impressive. Um, what's it going to come down to, you think, Bill, in Ohio State, Texas, in the Cotton Bowl, in what I'm calling this Ohio State redemption tour? Because as you remember, I know you remember, like I do, the way Ohio State limped out of the Rose Bowl, out of the Cotton Bowl last year, getting beat 14-3, didn't score a touchdown. You're just kind of going, whatever. Offensive line couldn't block me and you. Now their offensive line has really come on despite the challenges it's faced. But then you got Texas, which is underachieved offensively. Had to go to overtime, lost in overtime to Georgia, had to go in overtime to beat Arizona State. What a great game by Arizona State. Great fourth quarter. What's this going to come down to, Ohio State, Texas?
Well, I mean, for Texas, you got to survive the first quarter. The way that Ohio State has played, though. I mean, once they get past that, I think one of the things I do anticipate this is more of a defensive game because both teams are 1 and 2 in the country in yards per pass attempt. Texas does have a very good secondary. How do they try to cover Jeremiah Smith? Because Jeremiah Smith has looked like the best player in all of college football the last 2 weeks. It reminds me of like Ezekiel Elliott when he didn't win the Heisman, and then all of a sudden, most dominant player in the playoff. He was. And Jeremiah Smith has been that. Will Howard's been on point, and their defense has been very good. JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer have been amazing. So how do they get the quarterback against those Texas tackles? Cam Williams will be back. So there's a lot of in between the stuff. And is Quinn Ewers inconsistent, or is he big game Quinn? Which one do we get? Last 4 weeks, pretty inconsistent. Mixed bag. But if he's on, yeah, they've got receivers too. They got 4 guys that average 16 yards per catch. So I'm just looking forward to. I love games when you've got a lot of NFL talent on the field, both ways. They're going to hit each other. I think it's going to be a pretty. I think this one's going to be a little tighter. But Ohio State has advantage because their offense has been more consistent.
Yeah, and the big play capability. I mean, they had 3 touchdowns of 40 yards or more, 42 yards or more against Oregon. We saw what they did against Tennessee. Just went right down the field on them several times. And then you've got the big play capability. Actually, they had 4. Did I say 3? I meant 4 touchdowns of 40-something yards or more, including Travion Henderson's 66-yard jaunt. That was just, you could just feel the air come out of what was left of the whatever Rose Bowl parade balloon that was left in the stadium there. It was pretty magnificent. This team is really hitting on a lot of cylinders on offense, but they can be better. End of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter shows that from a defensive standpoint. But when they had to put the hammer down defensively, they got it done. Jack Sawyer, I know, is one of your sons' heroes. Who take Jeremiah Smith out of the equation? Who's just jumped off the page at you, jumped off the screen at you, whatever you want to call it? You've seen them live too. Who's just jumped off the screen at you more than anyone else with this Ohio State team other than Jeremiah Smith?
Well, you asked me, I obviously go on with other local Columbus radio personalities and, Bobby Carpenter and Anthony Schlegel. I remember about a month ago, I was on their show and Cody Simon is consistently my favorite player on this team. I think he's the heart of this team. I think he's the guy that, flying around seems to be the right place at the right time type of guy. You look at his numbers and it's like, that all checks out. And I go back to that Michigan game. He was crying on the part. He wasn't crying. He had tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
He apologized to us. And I'm thinking, what are you doing that for? Like, you don't owe us an apology. You're the one out there laying
we are the public.
Right, I get that.
Well, this is your pipeline to the public right here.
No, but I'm saying, like, he did nothing wrong. That guy he always plays so hard. And if I was pointing to a guy on Ohio State's defense, I consistently point to him. I'm like, he may not have the talent of a Jack Sawyer. He may not have the talent of a Caleb Downs. But I think he's one of those glue guys that helps hold this thing together. And they've got a bunch of, as Kirk Herbstreit pointed out on the telecast, they've got a bunch of fourth and fifth year guys on this team. Caleb Downs added to it. I think Cody Simon just consistently plays very well, and I think they're playing very connected on that side of the ball. He's the guy that jumps out to me.
Yeah, it is amazing to watch them play defense right now. Yeah, they gave up a couple of fourth down conversions that were kind of crazy, and a real long third down that set up a fourth down conversion. Who knows? They might have. They could have come close to a shutout against Oregon, which is nuts. When
I say, like, he had tears in his eyes, that shows how much he cares.
Yeah.
I love football players who care. And you can tell he's one of those guys. You can tell Jack's one of those guys. And that's why you can tell the Rose Bowl meant something to them. And I didn't realize till I looked. I knew, but you got to go back and look. I was like, and they haven't lost a Rose Bowl in a while.
No.
They won back to the Arizona State game. It was the one before that. Who'd they lose to?
Well, they lost to USC in the 1984 season, 85 Rose Bowl.
So that's the last time they lost the Rose Bowl. They take it very seriously. And, you're going down to Arlington, Jerry World. There's going to be a lot of Buckeye fans there too. They always show up at that game. I'm interested to see I don't think we're going to be talking crowd percentages because there'll be a lot of Buckeye fans down there as well.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of burnt orange and scarlet, or as Chris Fowler called it, crimson, but that's all right. It's red's red, I guess, in his mind. But the bottom line is, it should be. I'm just offensively, give me one guy, and then we'll get out of here from Ohio State, because this is mainly Ohio State people watch this, I would think. One guy from Ohio State on the offensive side of the ball who's not Jeremiah Smith, who has just jumped out at you.
Well, I mean, the offensive line collectively is one answer because they're not that they pushed people around a little bit in that game, right? It wasn't just Travion, Quinchug they got out ahead and then they were able to push Oregon around a little bit and close it out. So I guess that's not one guy.
That's not one guy.
But if I was
just
going
named
one
about 8, go ahead now.
If I was going one guy, I'd keep it simple. I mean, Will Howard. You talk about a man that's backed it up since kind of snippy after the Michigan game, kind of snippy in the media and not snippy in a bad way, just short answers. And he's let his play do the talking. Yeah. Get him on the podium. Let him on the podium next time, especially when he plays the way that he played. They're throwing the ball down the field. He has been very accurate, and he looks very under control in both of those games. So, I mean, who else do you want me to say?
That's good. That's a good one. I mean, by the way, Will Howard, he did get on the podium. He went back door on the guy. He went around the other side and got up on him. Finally, what I wanted to tell him was the guy telling him not to come on the podium should have gotten off the podium and let the winning quarterback, who had a hell of a night, 310 yards passing, get on the podium. But somebody's got to orchestrate things.
Well, and then one more, Tim. Not to interrupt you. look in this game, the tight ends are going to be important.
Yes.
Scott's going to be important. Gunnar Helm is kind of, when you watch Gunnar Helm, this is not a perfect comparison. He's kind of their Travis Kelce. He's not Travis Kelce. Nobody is, but they use him in similar ways. Like you'll see their guys are covered down the field. He'll slip out, and you'll be like, how in the world is that guy that open? So he's one guy. Scott had the big catch right off the go. That was a beautifully designed play. And I think both tight ends in this matchup, because Texas does have pretty good linebackers. They got Anthony Hill in the junior. He's very good. So I think this is a game. I say that all the time because I played a couple years of tight end in high school, but keep an eye on the tight ends in this game as well.
By the way, yeah, that was a nice play to start the game. I've been waiting to see that play for years, not games, for years from Ohio State, where you line up with the widescreen look and have a pump, and then one guy breaks. Thank goodness they finally got to it. Is the way I look at it. But two of their first three plays I hadn't seen all year. I hadn't seen ever. That little underneath route that Jeremiah Smith ran, and their defense rotated really slowly on it, as Will Howard told me. And boom, man, catch and run. Wow, best player in the country happens to have the ball in his hands on the third play of the game. He goes for a touchdown. But you're right. I mean, I'll agree about Gunnar Helm. I think that's obviously he is very much on the Buckeyes' minds. And the guy I would name other than Will Howard and other than Jeremiah Smith on the offense, I think a lot of those guys are playing at an elite level. I think Donovan Jackson is over the top, having moved from guard to tackle, and the way he is playing now, he is playing like a man possessed, but under control, which is hard to do.
First team Sporting News All-American Donovan Jackson. He was on our first team, and part of the reason why we put him on there was he would have been an All-American at his other position.
Bingo.
Anyway, and
Bingo.
He made the unselfish move to move out. And after the first game against Penn State, even in the first game against Penn State, I mean, you're switching to tackle when you're blocking Abdul Carter.
Yeah.
You're blocking the best edge rusher. You've made the switch to tackle, and you have to block the best edge rusher in the country. And he settled into that position, and he's been marvelous. And he's great to talk to. So, when you have good kids on top of it, it's good to see Donovan Jackson have success. It's good to see that in middle of the line kind of come together a little bit. And then, again, they'll be challenged. This Texas front's pretty good. But, again, when you have that much five-star talent on the football field, and you hear Ryan Day talk about it all the time, the execution's going to matter.
Yeah, gotcha. Bill, this isn't coming out till middle of the week, as you well know, the Tim May Show. You and I are recording it a little bit earlier than that, but come on, man, who you got? Who moves to the national championship game in Atlanta, Georgia, in the Mercedes-Benz Dome? What is that? 9 days after Ohio State.
January 20th.
Yeah. January 20th. Who moves to the championship game 2025, championship game 2024-2025 season?
I'm going to pick Ohio State and Notre Dame this week. I think Ohio State wins, and I do think it's tight. I don't think this is a blowout. I think it's probably 7 to 10 point victory. That Texas makes them work. For the Texas-Ohio State games we've watched in our lifetime, 2 of the 3 were really good games.
Yes.
The other one, Ohio State controlled. And I just think it's Texas's inconsistency. The other one is actually really harder to pick because Notre Dame has some things that Texas doesn't, or Penn State doesn't have. Riley Leonard's running ability. I think their defense is a little bit better connected. I used that word earlier. Notre Dame and Ohio State's defenses are connected. Notre Dame has a lot of guys that have played together a long time. They will need more in the passing game to win that game, though, because what Penn State has is good defense. We'll see if Abdul Carter plays by the time this released. I mean, who knows? I bet he's game time decision. That they'll say he's expected or plans to play, but you won't know until he's out there. And they have Tyler Warren. They have Tyler Warren in the passing game, and Drew Aller's played all right. Their running game's been good. Been impressed with Penn State's offensive line, too. So it'd be wild if we got Ohio State and Penn State. But I do think we're going to get Ohio State and Notre Dame, and then you and I's job up until January 20th is going to be pretty easy because there'll be plenty of storylines coming out of that one.
Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable that's a possibility. It's unbelievable that an all Big Ten championship game is a possibility. And it's really when you think about expansion of conferences a couple of years ago. It's unbelievable that the Southeastern Conference saving grace is a team that had to sort of beg its way in and bring money, I'm sure, in some form or fashion. You follow my drift. Is Texas could save the day for the Southeastern Conference. Bill Bender, thank you very much for joining the Tim May Show again. You always fly straight and level, my man. That's what I appreciate. But you do some barrel rolls along the way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on as always. And maybe if we get down to Atlanta, if Buckeyes win, like we're both predicting, that, you and I can maybe do a live show down there. It'd be a lot of fun.
It sure would. I know you're going to be on the Tim May Show again next week, so I hope you pencil in a little bit of time. But ladies and gentlemen, Bill Benner of the Sporting News on the Tim May Show. Appreciate you, Bill.
Hey, thank you.
Oh my goodness! Oh, late breaking news! Tim May has picked up another co-pilot on this flight. It's just going to be a brief. He came with his own parachute. He's going to jump out like he always does. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable G. Scott Senior. G. Scott Senior, welcome back once again to the Tim May Show, my man.
Tim May, I always tell you, man, you my favorite. You are my favorite, brother. Like, this is one of the things that I'm going to miss most is coming on and hanging out with you, brother.
Yeah. But when you say favorite, man, I know you're on that carnivore diet and you got favorite cuts of meat, but you stick them right in the toaster. And
man. Every time I come on your show, man, I'm cooking. That's because I cook every day.
Hey, listen, I'm gonna let people know that you sent me a video of your latest creation, which looked like was it a rib roast? What was that?
Nice 8-pound rib, prime rib.
Yeah.
Right. In the refrigerator for about 5 days with a salt brine. Took it out, let it get room temperature, Tim May. Put the seasoning and the rub on there. Then put the butter all over it with the rosemary, the thyme, the sage, and all that good stuff. Massage it in there, put it on that smoker, and it got happy, brother. It got happy.
Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Dude, I could smell it through the video. As I told you, it was carnivore porn. That video you sent me, that was crazy. And I bet it tasted even better. Tell me it did.
It tasted better. And before I head down to Dallas, Texas, gonna put on some beef ribs, some monster beef ribs. So, life's good, man. Life's good.
I don't know what's happened to you. I don't know if this carnivore diet is good or bad, but boy, it is worth trying, right?
No doubt, man. No doubt. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about the last time you were on here. Toughest team wins. Toughest team wins before Ohio State took on Tennessee. Brought it up to your son the other day in a press conference. Your son, has emerged as probably the most eloquent speaker on the Ohio State football team, and I'm talking about the whole team. If you follow my drift.
Yeah.
Just knows how to put things into words like his dad. But the bottom line is, I brought that up at the end of the press conference, and we were talking about how people were making fun of them for being, too Christian, too whatever, when things weren't going well. Yeah. They're doing the same stuff they were doing from a Christian standpoint, and man, are they smoting the opposition? I think it's from the Bible, smote. But what do you make? Wait a minute, just real quick, G Senior, what do you make of this?
What do I make of the?
What do you make of them smoting the opposition the way they have?
Oh, well, I think it's about peaking at the right time, right? That's all life. And by the way, I know sometimes I'm on this show and I like to compare life to football because football is a microcosm of life.
Yes.
Right? It truly is. And in life, there are times that you peak at the right and or wrong times. There's people that right now that peaked in high school. Yeah. And those were their glory years. And they still talk about those years. Yeah. I was prom king, 1988. And they don't talk about anything after that. And that's great. And I'm not making fun of that, right?
Right.
It's the same thing in football, right? You can peak in September, or you can peak in December and or January. That's what it's all about. I think Tennessee, great team. I think Oregon, great team. As a matter of fact, every team right now that's in it, especially in the semifinals, these are all great teams. Notre Dame, Penn State, right? Texas, the Ohio State. These are all great teams. It's about peaking at the right time. Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, how many times do they say, I don't know about it this year, and then boom, they peak at the right time. Joe Burrow, I'm telling you right now, nobody wanted the Bengals in the playoffs. Because if you get the Bengals in the playoffs, you know Joe Burrow likes to act the fool in January.
Yes.
So as for what happened with the Buckeyes against these teams, they peaked at the right time. And sometimes, and I've said this on your show before, and I'll say it again, in life, you have to go through it to get to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to lose to the team up north. It sucked. That was real adversity. But there's most of the time in our lives, our breakthrough happens when we have adversity that we got to push through. So as far as this Buckeye team, I think that this is a Buckeye team, right? That has looked at each other. And when I say each other, I mean coaching staff, I mean players, I mean with each other inside of that Woody. And they say, you know, the whole saying, Ohio against the world. It's the Woody Hayes Center. It's the Buckeyes against the world. It's just them. It's not outside noise. It's not, oh, well, they're this, and they're to this, and they're to that. You can't please everybody. You brought up the comment about what my son said about there was talk about saying, oh, there's too much Christianity on the team. I want my players to be tough. Right? So it's like Goldilocks in the Three Bears when she goes to taste the sports. Too hot, too cold, and just right. Well, one minute they say, oh, we want our players like this. Oh, 1 minute a player headbutts somebody. Did you catch that? Anyways, a player headbutts somebody, right? That's to this, right? So there is always going to be someone. So with that being said, you just be a better person every single day, a better player every single day.
Yeah.
That's what it takes to get to the next step. And as far as what happens from here on out, I don't know. I have no idea. But whatever happens, I believe that the Buckeyes will put their best foot forward on Friday night.
Gee, what I saw basically that players meeting after the loss to Michigan, whereas your son said first, you know, they were in there, I think, with Coach Day. Might have been the only coach in there, but anyway, you're in there with Coach Day, and then it was players. And they basically had a, you know, come to football God's meeting. You know what I mean? I'm not going to throw Jesus in there.
Tim, how long you been married?
Yeah.
How long you been married, Tim?
42 years.
Let me ask you a question. How many times has your wife called you up and say, we need to talk? Huh?
How long have I been married? At least 42 times anyway.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that, again, I'm relating football to life.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations. Hey, we need to talk. And back in my day, we always had those talks. I don't know why, but they were always at the kitchen table. Yeah. That's where those conversations would be had. Let's talk, let's sit down and get through it. Yep. So whether it's therapy or for marriage or work or relationship, whatever it is, the Buckeyes and that football team, no different. They sat down and they had a we need to talk moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it amazing? Because they gathered after that meeting, as G and Brandon Ennis pointed out, G Jr. and Brandon Ennis pointed out, locked arms, you know, Christian moment, them together. Well, I'm going to call it more of a religious moment. Maybe everybody's not Christian in there, but,
no doubt.
They're joined by a mutual spirit of wanting to play football at its finest. Sure. And it doesn't mean you're going to win, but it is a renewed spirit that at this point cannot be denied. I mean, sure. This team is literally joined at the hip everywhere you look. Offense, defensive guys hanging, playing to their utmost. Yes. Did they give up some points to Oregon? Yeah. You know why? Because Oregon's damn good. Did they give up a few points to Tennessee? Yeah,
Yeah.
because Tennessee's damn good. But did they jump on them from the get-go? Both of them? Like they wanted to win that game, in the first minute? Absolutely. I think it makes a difference. And it also makes a difference if you don't get that part done, you just keep trying to jump on them, right? And that's what stands out about this team, G. But are you, as a father, I got to ask you straight up, based on what you saw in that Michigan game, final game of the regular season, are you a little surprised to be at this moment seeing your son and his team now favored to win it all? I mean, that is a little bit nutsy when you think about it.
No, I'm not surprised. And here's why I'm not surprised. Because it'd be one thing if in the beginning of the season that you, me, and everybody that's listening and watching this, didn't we all have this thought? This feeling that we have right now, isn't this what we all had collectively at the beginning of the season? Did we not think, oh my goodness, this is going to roll? But you know what? That's not how life works. That's not how life works. Because sometimes, right, everything's a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? Mike Tyson said that, right? Everybody thinks I'm going to do this and I plan to do these things. How many of y'all went to college for one thing and are doing something else, the entire thing? How many of you guys plan to do this with your life in 2024 and your life went that way? Sometimes things don't go according to plan. And I think that's where the Buckeyes are, right? I'm sure. Now, did I know that the Buckeyes would play like this against Tennessee and Oregon? No, not really. And because here's where I was wrong. I was wrong because I told you. I said, if whoever wins, whoever's the toughest team with Tennessee and the Buckeyes would win.
Yep.
I think the Buckeyes, they're not really trying to really out tough you. I mean, they're tough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're tough. But are you seeing the counters? Are you seeing the different things? I mean, this offense and what we are seeing, I don't know about you, Tim. I ain't seen this all year. So there is no blueprint. Like, we haven't seen this. They didn't play like this against the team up north. They didn't play like this against Nebraska. They didn't play like this against Marshall. I mean, we can keep going. This is the first time. So this team that we are seeing, we're seeing like that new person that's got them new shoes. They feeling good.
Yep. Walking down the street. Please notice my new shoes. Dude, I want to tell you, I didn't want to interrupt you a while ago, but we had this same conversation in August. People can look that podcast up, that Tim May show up, where I told you, everything's right there. Is it going to happen? And you laid out a lot of the pitfalls that can befall a team of this magnitude, a team of this talent. Nobody knows what's coming, but you got the pieces. So what you and I both agreed on, everybody agreed on, you got the pieces. But boy, when the pieces come together, what a machine, right? What a machine. What a glorious machine. Now it's so fun watching them. Now I wanted to ask you this. Were you wearing a belt at the Rose Bowl? Because I'm wondering, did you jump out of your pants when the first play is a pass to G. Scott Jr. down the right sideline, a play I've been waiting to see for years of them being set up for the wide screen, pump fake, and one guy go down the sideline, happened to be your son. That had to be a hallelujah moment for you. For number one, it was your son. Number two, haven't seen that before. What's coming next? That's the thought I had.
I'll tell you guys, I'll share this with you as a father, as what I was feeling and what I was seeing at the same time at that moment. I saw him in the backfield, and the first thing I thought was, oh, that's interesting. The beginning of the game, he lines up in the backfield next to Will Howard. And then on the ball snap, he gets ready and he goes down into the flat. And I'm like, oh, he's getting ready to, they're getting ready to throw a screen. So I thought he was going to block, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
That's
now,
the old way of blocking, folks.
Yeah. This is in slow motion to me, right? And I said, oh, he's getting ready to block. And I said, oh, he's not going to block. So then when he faked the block, I took my eye off of him because I'm like, oh, there must be something else going on. And then I saw Will come back. I said, oh. And when he threw it to him, and it was the way he caught it and the way he hurdled the first player. And I'm going to tell you what I said to my wife standing next to me. You know what I said?
No.
It's over. And I'll tell you why I said that. Because, look, my son has been playing his role. He's on an offense that's really good. You got some great players. But when you let the tight end in that situation hit you for a 30-yard strike, you could feel the momentum in the stadium. I said it was over, and they scored 2 plays later. Confirmation.
Yep. All right. The other day, you tweeted about Jackson Smith-Njigba and how great he is, how great he's going to be.
Yeah.
Do Ohio State fans, do you think, truly appreciate the ridiculous run of receivers that have come through this place and are still trying to show up? But with Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, your son G. Scott came in as a wide receiver. Now he's maybe Texas' worst nightmare, a tight end they're going to throw to, possibly. But you understand what I'm saying. But Jeremiah Smith in particular, do you think Ohio State fans truly appreciate this parade that's gone on in front of them for going on a decade now?
Dude,
It's unprecedented. Only team close is Alabama.
I think it's tough. I think it's tough to really, really appreciate, right? Because it's been happening so much and so often, right? It's like that rich kid waking up every single day. Remember, did y'all watch the show Silver Spoons? Spoons with Ricky Schroeder. They used to be my show.
Yeah.
Love that show. They had the trains and Alfonso Ribeiro, they'd be hanging out.
Yeah.
Well, they woke up Ricky Schroeder, Silver Spoons woke up every day with the train thing in his room, right? Yeah. So if you wake up with that all the time, at some point you're like, yeah, I'm used to it. At this point, Buckeye fans, well, yeah, I'm used to it, right? I'm used to Chris Olave. I'm used to Garrett Wilson, right? Let's go back. I'm used to Paris Campbell, right? I'm used to Johnny Dixon. I can keep going with this. Shout out to all those because I like to bring up other Buckeyes because those Buckeyes are the reason they've laid the foundation for the brotherhood. But, come on, man. Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, J-Mo, shout out Jameson Williams, you know what I mean? Yeah. Marvin Harrison. Now you got Jermaine, you got Emeka. Man.
You said Chris Olave. You mentioned Jameson Williams. Who went on to Alabama and now is playing for the Detroit Lions. It's crazy. Crazy, G. I like to call you G.
Yeah, it's good, man.
You don't mind me calling you G, do you?
No, I'm not at all. Hey, Tim, man, you in LA, go ahead and tell the people you forgot about me in LA.
Dude, I'm 70 years old. I was babysitting a guy who was with me. He's a good guy. He's one of my best friends. Okay. And I totally forgot about you, but I ain't forgetting about you this time.
Are you babysitting them this time?
Huh? Well, the only thing that's going to keep us apart this time is a possible ridiculous snowstorm on Thursday. That's the way I'm looking at it. But you and I will touch base after this show is over. We don't want everybody knowing where we're hanging out. Last question for you.
Yeah.
Is this the last stop for this train, or you see this train going all the way to ATL? I think the 404 area code, whatever it is.
Hey, me and a few other parents that I'm close with, we have this thing. We don't look at flights for the next town. We don't look at hotels. We don't look at what's going on. Like, I didn't look at what's going on check this out, for Dallas until the beginning of the fourth quarter. That's when I started looking, because I said, okay, I can see it now. Even when it was 30-something-0.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, So the answer to your question is I know the train is going to Dallas. That's all I can talk about, baby.
Yeah.
It's Dallas.
Ricky Schroeder's train. Jump on it.
That's
Silver
it.
spoons, man, coming right by your bed, picking you up.
Tim,
Hey.
what you having for dinner tonight, bro?
I'm having chili and cornbread. One of my favorite things of all time. I'm not having prime rib roast done the right way on the. You don't have the you have the big green egg. What do you have?
I got the big Traeger.
Yeah, that's right, Traeger. I knew that when I asked.
Yeah.
Hey, G,
Yeah.
always
Yes,
a pleasure. We're doing it again next week. Hey, win or lose, we're doing it again next week, because what a ride this has been already,
yes,
correct?
Sounds
The
good.
Retribution Tour for the 2024 football team is live and in color, and it's steaming toward Dallas right now. G, thank you once again, G. Scott Sr., for joining the Tim May Show. Man, appreciate it when Bill Bender joins. He's one of my favorite people. Maybe not as favorite though as Matt Wilhelm. What do you think, Matt? I mean, where do you think you are in my ranking system?
You know what, Tim? If I make, I was gonna say top 5, but that's lofty,
That's
because I
good.
mean you've got great company in your life. So if I make top 10, top 8,
Yeah.
I feel like I can be buried, and there'll be a shimmer and a shine on my gravestone someday, because I've made your top 10.
You're top 5, baby. Believe me. Believe me. Hey, like in the college football playoff rankings this week.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, but let's get back to it, man. There are just some guys here, just playing football, man. You already named Cody Simon. You already named Will Howard. We already talked about Jeremiah Smith. I mean, what needs to be said about him? But I'm telling you, man, Donovan Jackson making, you call it an unselfish move, whatever you want to call it, but it was a necessary move from left guard to left tackle going into that Penn State game. And then from then on, I mean, you know, he was battling for right off the get-go there, and I thought played a great game against Penn State. But man, he just exudes what you want in a leader on an offensive line, because he just basically doesn't do a lot of bold, big talking. He does a lot. When he talks, it's more matter of fact. This big guy saying something, everybody, okay. But I mean, just the way he's playing with the violence, the viciousness, whatever you want to call it. I mean, uh, I you talk about a guy in the right place at the right time to lead a shuffled deck there that's been
Yeah,
shuffled 7 times. He's the guy, isn't he?
he definitely is, and I think the one thing that came to my mind when I think about Donovan Jackson is, like, he's been a stabilizing force, along the offensive line. Um, and for a lot of reasons, is like, yes, the position change, and the position change, I think more so than anything, what might go, unnoticed is there was not any drop off in the position change, and maybe it took a game to get comfortable there, but
Yeah.
then, like, I just see his name showing up in the top 10 on the Pro Football Focus, performance grades each week at left tackle, which means he's not just doing what he did at left guard. He's actually, like, playing as well as any left tackle in college football of the teams that are playing throughout the bowl season, which is to be said. I also believe that, on the other end, Fryer stabilizing force to not be injured,
Oh
to
yeah.
stay in there, and to just be counted on to allow Coach Fry, Coach Kelly, Coach Day to kind of monkey with the middle, right? The guard, center, guard, because your tackles are set. So I mean, stabilizing force, the protection for Will Howard, to not have him run around like a chicken with his head cut off, or feel like there's immense threats because of pass rush, has been a lot to do with Donovan Jackson, and I think Josh Fryer, and then the guys stepping up inside. I want to also, like, a guy that, or a couple of guys going backwards, and I'm gonna flip to the defense really fast, that I think have been extremely stable in the last 2 games. Is I'm gonna go with the 2 outside corners, Igbinosun and Denzel Burke,
Yep.
right? And I think Denzel Burke undid a lot of call it, like, the imposed shame that came from getting torched in game 1 against Oregon. and he was amazing. And I think he was amazing against in Tennessee. And I think I'm gonna give Igbinosun credit because throughout the season at specific junctions, there, he's a handsy physical guy, and those penalties have extended drives and moved the football down the field. And I think he's worked on that immensely. So I get, credit to him, credit to Tim Walton, credit to Jim Knowles for identifying what he needs to work on and having that work happen in practice and show up in the games. Because you and I both know, and going back to 2002, it's like, it was a pass interference call in the end zone that allowed that game to continue. So those plays, those penalties can be, when they're not a factor, and it allows you to play, you get showcased the way that I'm trying to showcase our two corners and how great they've been, not giving up big plays. But then on the flip side, it can cost you a game. It can extend the drive that puts the team in field goal position. It can be the first down that gets the motor running in a 4-minute offense that allows them to go for the touchdown or the field goal before half or at the end of the game. That could be the difference. And so, props to those two guys as well. And I think one of the guys that I know that even going back to last year when we weren't doing this, as or weekly, is I want to say Tomoliau and Jack Sawyer, and that pass rush has been mimicking the playmaking of Cody Simon, but they're in much limited opportunities, being on the edges the way that they are, but showing up at the right times, pass deflections, quarterback hurry, quarterback hit, sacks, forced fumbles, right? I mean, even just having the timing of an offense be off kilter because those two guys are coming has been immense for this defense.
Yeah, and the way they drop them off sometimes, the way Jim Knowles has them drop off. I mean, just they got by pretty much, if I remember correctly, from the Rose Bowl. And I haven't looked at it closely since. Just I remember vignettes in my brain because they stood out. But I think Ohio State got away with just a 4-man rush most of the day, and still managed to bother, shake up Dylan Gabriel, a Heisman finalist. Much more so, and obviously sacked him several times.
And Tim, to be honest, just
compared to the first game,
right? I was just going to say, so that was, if you recall, prepping for the Oregon game, it was going back and studying, the escape paths. The where does Dylan Gabriel like to go when he doesn't have read 1 or read 2? Does he step up and move left as a lefty? Does he step up and roll over his shoulder? Whatever that was. We saw Ohio State not really get much pressure on Dylan Gabriel and him make a lot of plays with his legs in the first game, and flip it completely on its head in game 2.
Yep.
Kept him in the pocket, kept him in the pocket for the most part, didn't scramble much. And then to your point, like you said, a number of sacks. And you could see that's marrying back end with front end, and in some cases, those are covered sacks. But you saw, different line stunts, different ways to move guys around. So it was a masterful performance that I think all of Buckeye Nation was a little bit in awe at 31-0.
Yeah, my 3 favorite things basically exemplifying what we just talked about was Donovan Jackson on the Jeremiah Smith second touchdown. Will Howard did like a slight fade left, and then threw back to Jeremiah Smith, who put a boogie woogie on the defensive back. As he said, he went that way and I went that way, and it was his favorite play, by the way. Jeremiah Smith said of that game. But in front of Will Howard, Jordan Birch, the feared 6 foot whatever, 290, 300-pound whatever, super athlete whatever, defensive end, who was supposed to strike terror in the hearts of Ohio State offensive linemen in the second match because he didn't play in the first one. There is Donovan Jackson literally in hand-to-hand combat with him, right? I mean, just wow.
I would also say even like the ukulele, in game 1 made, that's how you say his name, made a bunch of plays. But I meant like the entire Oregon defensive line that was so strong.
Did you say ukulele or ungalele?
Yes, that one.
You said ungalele.
I was probably somewhere in between, but somewhere in between. Him. But, right. I want to say but the defensive line that was so destructive without their best player in game 1 all remained nameless in game 2
Yeah.
because of not only Donovan Jackson's performance, but the entire offensive line.
Yeah, Jordan Burch made one play early, and then I didn't remember much of him at all. Josh Fryer and Donovan Jackson, I thought, took care of him. The next play that stands out to me, speaking of Davis and Igbinosin, the guy with the mitts, the guy they had to put mitts on to teach, he had a pass breakup. He was never touched this guy, had a pass breakup, ran down the field with him, deep ball down the left sideline. He broke the pass up with his helmet
Yes,
without touching the guy. That's about
correct.
as uh, a blue ribbon award winner as I can think of. And then the other, Denzel Burke, basically backed off, ran a post route with the deep wide receiver when they tried to pick on him one time deep, and he was closer to the poorly thrown ball than the wide receiver was. So number one, that meant pressure was getting to Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel threw it up for grabs, and it came where no close to hitting anybody. The closest it came was Denzel Burke, who outran the defender on the same route. So those are
Yeah,
three
and I
great
think
examples of getting your act together. Go ahead.
absolutely, and I just think that when you look at the like the recipe for how you beat this defense and what beat this defense maybe all year, it was big plays, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe Michigan was the only team that kind of like plotted it ugly, 3 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, first down.
And
To do that against, and I think
two
we've
interceptions
already
that were two interceptions that were ridiculously costly. One set up their only touchdown,
absolutely
and one kept Ohio State
correct.
from
Uh,
maybe scoring.
So going back to the preview of this Texas game is continuing doing what we're doing and not giving up, not giving up the big play because we are not the defense. We are so much better, I think, than we were in the regular season, and we're not the defense that gives up the big play. We're going to be the defense that makes you earn everything. And I think it's going to be very hard for anybody that's left. That's Notre Dame, Penn State, and our Texas opponent, in the semifinals to have to work. That means the Sarkeesian or whoever's calling plays for Texas is going to have to call the game almost perfect. That means Ewers and his receivers are going to have to be on and play almost perfect. And then I think also that big Texas offensive line is going to want to turn around and hand the football off, even though they didn't, to I know not a lot of national pundits kind of were very critical of Sarkeesian and their play calling in that Arizona State game to not turn around and hand it off a little bit more.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to run the football. And statistically, with where Ohio State now sits, we are top 10 in almost every defensive category. So we're stingy. We don't give up runs. We don't give up passes. We pass efficiency, red zone efficiency, play negative plays, that's sacks, that's tackles for loss. We're, top 15 in the country. So we're playing great on both sides of the football. And I think it is not a surprise because what's finally happened to him is we have married what paper has said and performance should look like.
Isn't that amazing?
Where paper has said we should win these football games against everybody in this in this way, but now we're finally doing it, and I think it's for us as Buckeye fans. I mean, I'm jumping out of a chair every time they score, regardless of whether they're up by 42 or they're up by 7.
Yeah.
But the way they're doing it is the way that we thought they would look all year, and without moving too far ahead, I think this is an immense learning lesson for Buckeye fans, for Ryan Day as the Buckeye head football coach moving forward, is like to play loose and to like use all the bullets in your gun and to play great defense. It doesn't have to be close, and I know that's very hard to do 12 or 13 times in a regular season when games don't count the way they do now when it's win or go home. But I think there's an immense lesson that Ryan Day and this staff and these players should take from this on into the future. That's next season and the season after that.
Leave no doubt was the theme of the year going back in August. That was going to be the theme of the year. And I guess leave no doubt, ... in the playoffs. And here's the other thing, lesson learned. You hate to say it out loud because some people still get offended. Your college football season, I want to make another point before you jump in. No, you can jump in after I say this. College football season doesn't necessarily end with the rivalry game anymore for anybody. It doesn't necessarily end with the Michigan game. It is that big dot in the middle now almost of your season that you would love to have on your mantle, but it doesn't necessarily ruin your season. And if it has still ruined some Ohio State fans' seasons, then golly, man, get therapy. That's all I got to say. I mean, this
Yeah,
team, if you're
I
not
don't disagree
proud,
with you.
if you're not proud of the way this Ohio State team has played the last 2 weeks, because you can't go back and fix something that's happened. You know what I mean? And it's not excusing it. Next year, before they play Michigan, everybody's going to be calling, oh my goodness, you can't lose 5 in a row. I understand it. But life has moved on. Christmas has come. It's New Year's has come, and you're still playing football. You're doing something right. Go ahead now.
I agree. No, I'm agreeing with you. But I think it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because regular season games, I'll even say like going back to like the whole like, do the Blue Bloods play each other in these home and homes in the non-conference games, right?
Yeah.
Or do they play a bunch of cupcakes and then get into conference play, dominate their conference to set the table for appearing in their conference championship game, and then really setting the table for entering the 12-team college football playoff?
Yeah.
Whereas, the nostalgia that tugs on our emotional heartstrings that
That's
is
why you
college
care.
football.
That's why you
Yeah,
care. Yeah.
it's why you care. It's, and I hate to say it, it's, and not maybe not anymore, but it's Browns, Ravens, Browns, Steelers. Like when you're playing in your division, there's just something different about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that it emotionally tugs on your heartstrings. And I think in some cases, Buckeye fans uh, are tired of Michigan fans. They just want to be able to walk around for 364 days and thumb their teeth at them.
Yeah, well, you may
A
win a national championship, but you didn't beat us. You can hear that coming already.
100%. And you get the gentleman, Dave Portnoy from Barstool, will be the first guy in line to tell you that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He'll also be the guy that tells you, the undefeated national championship last year at Michigan,
Yeah.
is going to trump any champion from this football season because they all have a blemish and
Yeah.
Michigan didn't, right? So there's those things, but no, I get that you're right, and I think that where a lot of Buckeye fans, not so much myself anymore, because once you emotionally close the door and move on, you move on. And I think we're immensely proud, to your point about this Buckeye team and what they've done against Tennessee and against Oregon, to undo our thoughts and emotionally get back on board. But you don't set out in the regular season to go undefeated, right? At Ohio State, your goal should be to win a lot of football games. That's a given, but it's beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national championship, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And and I think why it's a little fresh in our brain, because you have not checked the first box, it's allowed you to not check the second box. And we've been now, blessed enough 2 of the last 4 years to have the opportunity to potentially check the last box. But in 2022, we didn't. And that's why I think we can have the take or the narrative that you're trying to put out right now about, does it really matter? Does it not? If you're going to go win a national championship, it does and it doesn't. So I'm going to agree to disagree with you on that topic because it still matters.
Yeah. Of course it matters. I'm not stupid. One last thing. You've seen the Top Gun movies, right?
Yes, sir.
The original and then Top Gun Maverick. And
Yeah.
I wish you could get a zip cam and just dedicate it to being about 15 yards back of the Ohio State defense. Okay. And then I would like to just somehow or another be able to highlight number 8 and number 2, Lathan Ransom and Caleb
Caleb
Downs.
Downs. Yeah.
And just as they say in fighter weapons school or the Air Force flying Air Force fighter jets, watch those 2 Sidewinder missiles come off the rails on
Yeah.
every play, heat seeking where the play is going. I mean, it's been incredible to watch. And you can throw Jordan Hancock in there too, but a lot of times they've got him rotated to the backside. Sometimes it's Caleb Downs on the backside. Sometimes it's Lathan Ransom. But man, once they see the bogey and they get the target, they just come off the rails and it's fun to watch. Cody Simon's doing the same thing. Sonny Styles was doing the same thing against Oregon. But those two sidewinders, that's what I would call them now, not safeties, but sidewinders. The way they come off the rails is remarkable. Uh, what's your take on that? I mean, this
No,
this
I
is
think
how this is how you beat this is how you beat an offense that's so highly regarded, with Steve Sarkisian calling the plays and trying to dissect your defense. The way you beat them is with two ridiculous safeties with an awareness that's above average, if not superior. That's how you beat this offense that's coming up against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. What's your take on that?
no, you're absolutely right. I think they along with Igbinosun and Denzel Burke have played amazing. I think their ability to the launch you're talking about, like they just diagnose what's happening and get to the football angry. I mean, I've watched the McAfee call of Ransom's like run fit, where he just comes down, breaks down, and it's like, it's what's making us great. And I think that's one other layer to kind of like dive into in preparation for this football game. And it goes back to it was a Kenny Dillingham quote of I think it was the touchdown to go to overtime that Texas made. It
Yes.
was, and this goes back to the point about defense with the safeties is Dillingham talked about, they were in a zero coverage. They showed it a little early. Quinn
Yep.
Ewers checked the protection. He could have stand back there and had a sandwich and throw that football. There
Yeah.
was so much time to allow that post to get where it needed to be into the end zone for a touchdown, which then, forces the football game into overtime, and we all know what happened in overtime. But it's Jim Knowles and these highly skilled sidewinder missiles. Is it too high safety? Is it rat with a free, or they both
Yep.
come and play in zero, and we're bringing a blitz from some underneath guys? It's our ability to monkey with Quinn Ewers, monkey with protections, and show him one thing and play another, or show blitz from one side and bring the blitz from the other side and play a plethora of coverage behind it is the gift and is the chess match that I'm going to look for. And to
Yes.
your point about those two safeties, because we know that our corners, most cases, are going to be on islands, but those two safeties making us right and making the plays that they're making, I think, are also going to be immensely large in this football game because Ewers is going to be looking for a tell. He's been coached to look for a tell. He will be studying those tells on
Yep.
top of executing the play that Sarkisian made. And that's what just reigns supreme in my head is you flinch, Ewers sees the flinch, puts max protection if he sniffs a blitz of some sort, and just allows him to have all the time in the world with highly skilled receivers, getting open in a Sarkisian offense was what won them the football game. And if we now know that and we practice that all week and go execute with the players that we have, I believe we should be playing in a national championship game.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's literally gonna come down to that. I think Ohio State's going to have some success against their defense. Uh, to the level of which they have the past two games. I'm not sure, but when you've got a Jeremiah Smith who is always open. I'm trying to think of a store that's always open anymore. There aren't very many anymore, but
7-Eleven, maybe
yeah,
24 hours.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but
Super Walmart.
yeah, Super Walmart, maybe Speedway, but the bottom line is, but I call Jeremiah Smith a big time chain. You know what I mean?
But Tim, what's funny is if you go, and again, going back in our head, like we thought, and again, I just thought it was going to be a thing until it wasn't a thing. But like we thought that the attention that Jeremiah Smith would get would almost be from a decoy standpoint early in the Oregon football game because of the player that he is. Oregon just flat out couldn't cover him. Oregon flat out dropped him. I think the play construction by Chip Kelly with the motions, with some of the formations, shifting to the formations, and the double moves and the looks and the releases and the wheel route by G. Scott. It was just we are finally like it almost. And I hate and I've said this. I went to St. Ignatius basketball game. St. Ignatius won the basketball game by about 20 points, but everybody's like, "How about them Buckeyes?" And I go, the feeling that I get, I said, this offense on paper has always been the red Ferrari. right?
Yes.
And I feel like the red Ferrari's been operating with a governor that we can't go more than 90 or 100 miles an hour,
Yeah.
throughout the regular season. And it took the Michigan game happening for Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and all these players to go, well, why can't we go 225 in our
Yeah.
red Ferrari? And I feel like the governor's come off, and that governor comes with the play calling. That governor calls with some of the risks that you take on fourth down, believing in your players, having the right play, knowing exactly what the defense is going to be in, knowing that our defense is playing the way that it is, that you can get a little risky on offense. Um, it's like the governor is off the sports car, and we're just going through the gears, trying to see how far we can push this thing. That's mentally and physically.
Yeah. And it's sequential shifting, man, on the
Yeah,
with paddles on the
Tiptronic
steering
shifters. Yeah,
wheel.
there you go.
Yeah. I love sequential shift as opposed to the old way. Get it in that gate. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the first two of the first three plays in that game, and we'll end it with this because you hope you see the same creativity. Because I don't care who's playing. I love creativity on the
same.
offensive side of the ball, but incorporating the known factors. And they had run that wide screen a million times over the last many years. They had never had a guy from a pump fake then take off down the sideline, which I'd been waiting on for years. You can ask anybody sits next to me in the press box. I'm just going, it is there. I've said that a million times. Boom, G. Scott down the sideline out of
Yeah,
what looks like an opening widescreen safe play. No, bam. You hit him on the run 35 yards. 2 plays later, you bring Jeremiah Smith across the formation behind the line of scrimmage, and the Oregon defense, as Will Howard said to me after the game, they didn't rotate as fast as you thought they would. Boom, you get him in open space. He catches the ball, slips a tackle, goes for the touchdown. In 1 minute, Ohio State's up 7-0 over
yeah.
Oregon, and the beat down is on. Hey,
Tim,
last thing,
I'm gonna give you one last. So you can give your last thing. I'm gonna
you
give
go
you my
ahead.
last
Yeah,
take. I'm gonna make a hot take, and I'm gonna say the one guy who I feels like, because of what Jeremiah Smith represents now within our offense, Texas, I believe, will be ready for that. I feel like Ibuka is the perfect number two to Jeremiah being the number one. Okay.
yeah,
The guy that I think is going to be the factor that's going to have the big touchdown catch or the big third down conversion is going to be Carnell Tate. I feel like he has the capability to be a number one on many other teams, but flies under the radar because of how great Ibuka is and what Jeremiah Smith now represents within the offense. That at times Carnell Tate might just be running free, but like Jeremiah Smith's just so open that Will Howard's always going to look that way. And I just feel like Texas is going to be a little bit more prepared than maybe Oregon was and rotate a little faster to the point that you just made. And I think it's going to open up some of that intermediate, 10 to 20 yard chunk plays for Carnell Tate, maybe going back to the way that he played, back at home against Northwestern.
yeah. And you know what? He's got to. Well, actually, that was at Wrigley Field, but nobody's keeping count. Um, he he's got that one play. I call this the retribution tour for Ohio State. And you just think about that one drop, man, in the fourth quarter against Michigan,
Yeah.
by Kurt, who had a really good game up to that point.
Yes.
One play can make you or break you, and that would, despite everything that was going on in that game, that could have erased a lot of sins, man.
Of course.
And
Right.
so, yeah, I agree. I mean, and like you said, if Jeremiah Smith wasn't around, and Emeka Egbuka and Cardell Tate and Brandon Ennis, that'd be a pretty good threesome to throw out
It
there
would.
for anybody. So
Correct.
we'll see if that comes to fruition. I do believe it has to come down to that to a certain extent. Texas has got to go into that game no matter what. This freshman wide receiver doesn't beat us. That's what they got to
Correct.
be thinking, right?
And
That
that's
doesn't
my
mean he
thought
can't.
process is, well, somewhat, it doesn't mean that he can't, but it means that someone else might have to step up in a little bit of a
Correct.
larger role. And
Correct.
Ibuka has been just very consistent. And I feel like Carnell Tate at times has the big game and then just has a couple of catches, and has
Yeah.
the big game and maybe just has a couple of catches as an accent piece, where I feel like this could set up very well because of how talented he is, that he can go kind of like maybe be in the shadows and used appropriately by our offense, as the three off of Ibuka and of Jeremiah Smith as the complementary piece.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Matt Wilhelm. He spent half his life dissecting offenses and coming up with plays to win them, and he won a national championship with a 14-0, the the first team in college football history to go 14-0, major college football history. Matt Wilhelm has dissected things. He thinks Carnell Tate is going to rise up and be the guy. Sure hope Sarkisian and his staff don't see this until maybe Saturday. But otherwise, hey, Matt, we'll be back again next Monday, man, no matter what.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much. Go
Record this
Bucks.
thing, throw it out there for folks to enjoy. This has been quite the run, and as you said, we're in overtime, but it sure doesn't feel like it. Feels like we're in the middle of the season, doesn't it?
That's right. It does. It does. And when we're rolling, it makes it easy to talk about.
There you go, man. And until next week, for Matt Wilhelm, we will see you then.